Hi there, this is Kevin Carlson, and I'm here with Warehouse Mouse. Hello! And you're watching a podcast where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Cheese! It's not the line, Warehouse Mouse, it's roll it. Roll it!
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Join Jake and his friends on a journey through pop culture of the past, where they interview professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Happy to be with us. Thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Duffenbach. With me today, as always, our co-host, Chris Bixby. How's it going?
Doing good. Hello, everybody. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing great as always. Thank you for asking. And yeah, we have a lot of fun for you all for about to see, and a lot of things that this person got to do over the years and puppetry side of things. And recently they got to came out very soon. And yeah, I'm not gonna say any more. You'll see what I'm talking about when Chris is gonna say it. So Chris, what do we have for today?
Today we had the great pleasure of speaking with puppeteer and animatronic supervisor Dave Barclay. In puppetry, Dave is best known for projects like The Empire Strikes Back, through Star Wars, Labyrinth, The Little Shop of Horrors film, and various projects with the Muppets, a whole bunch of other things. And in animatronics, he worked on films like Cats and Dogs and Snow Dogs, whole bunch of things. And he also has a new autobiography coming out in February called My Life with Animatronics, Movies, Puppets, and Beyond. So we talk a little bit about that as well. So without further ado, enjoy our conversation with Dave.
Yes, see you then. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive.
Yes, today we're pleased to have with us Dave Barclay. Dave, happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm very good. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Yes.
So to kick this off, could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, very much. My name is Dave Barclay. I am a puppeteer. So I've worked on about 30 movies, about 50 TV shows, loads of commercials, and a lot of live puppetry when I was a kid. I'm a second generation puppeteer, meaning my mum and dad were puppeteers. So when I grew up as a kid, I had puppetry and performances and everything all around me. And so I had this amazing creative environment and absolutely loved it. And decided when I was a kid, I wanted to be a puppeteer too. But in my teenage years, I wanted not to follow their path, which was live theatrical puppetry. I wanted to get into TV and movies. And so that was my dream and my goal in my mid-teens.
Nice, nice. So that's actually a perfect segue. Was puppetry always something you wanted to do, or was there anything else you wanted to pursue at some point?
At one point, I got involved in my school friend's rock band, well, a jazz funk band, as the drummer, and I really loved that. It was the closest I ever got to becoming a rock star. And we only did a few gigs, and I was not a bad drummer, but I think I was a better puppeteer. So I never followed the path of being a musician. But again, something in the creative arts would have been something I would have followed if the film work and puppetry hadn't worked out.
Nice, nice.
Awesome. So I'm kind of curious. So did you got to make puppets as a child, or you got to puppeteering with your parents for many years? Before what was that like?
Right. Well, I was when I was about 4. I got my first string puppet. It's a Pelham puppet, a toy puppet that was made in the UK. And at age 4, I took to it immediately. I didn't tangle the strings. I really loved it. I really enjoyed making it come to life. And because my parents typically did glove puppets and hand puppets, so they weren't doing string puppets. So this was my own speciality as a kid, and I loved doing that. But when I was around about 6, 7, I started making my own puppets. And my father, who made all the puppets for their shows, showed me how to do the modeling, to do the molding in plaster, so I could cast my own puppets in papier-mâché and then later in plastic wood and that sort of thing. So So I got a lot of the creative skills by watching my parents work and build their own puppets and their puppet theatre and everything. And that was really fascinating to me. I loved it, and I wanted to definitely follow that path. But as I say, when I got to the teenage years, science fiction movies really interested me, and one of them was the original Planet of the Apes. And I love the
Oh
fact that
yeah.
they had these prosthetic makeups. And so as a kid, I decided I'll use the same techniques that I'd used in making my puppets to make these Planet of the Apes characters. And so I made a whole cast of, and made the masks, the wigs, the costumes, and we filmed on 8mm cinefilm, because this was before even video was available. So it was on cinefilm, and you had to send the film off to have it developed and come back, and you watched it on a projector in a darkened room. It was magical, and I loved it. And so that was one of the things that I did, making my own prosthetic makeups and mechanical masks, something that really fascinated me, which was kind of like a hybrid between puppetry and makeup.
Nice, nice. So now you're aside from like Muppets and things like that, you're also best known for your work on the Star Wars franchise. Can you talk about how you kind of first began working for them?
Yes, well, I was wondering how to get into the film industry. I'd seen Star Wars with a friend of mine and absolutely loved it. And we sat next to each other, and I said, I've got to work on something like this. I really wish I could work on a film like this, you know. So we decided we had to work in the film industry, but there was no way that we could get a way in. So I decided I would study sculpture, and hopefully that would get me in. But I was going to take a gap year from my education, which was quite typical back then. Take a year off of school and get a bit of life experience. So I took a summer job in London's most famous toy store called Hamleys.
Hmm.
So I was selling Pelham puppets, the little string puppets I'd got when I was a kid. So that was delightful. But one lunchtime when I was out at lunch, Mark Hamill from Star Wars came into the store,
Oh,
bought a whole
nice.
bunch of Pelham puppets for
Wow.
his private collection. And when I got back, found out he'd been there. I was devastated because I would have loved to have met him at that time. And of course, I didn't get the commission on the puppets. So it was like a terrible day. But the person who was covering for me said that Mark wanted a Darth Vader string puppet for his private collection, about 18 inches tall, custom made. And she said that I was somebody who could do that. So, but Mark had left. I didn't meet him. I wondered, well, maybe I can write to him, because the puppets that he had bought were going to be sent to his address in Malibu. So I asked my friend in the mail order department, could I have his address? And she said, absolutely not, it's not allowed. But she handed me a little slip of paper. So a letter was sent to Malibu, but I never heard anything. So I eventually left Hamleys and just chalked it up as a lost opportunity. But about 9 months later, Mark Hamill came back into Hamleys looking for me, because one of my friends called me and said, he's in here, he wants to get in touch. So I did. I went along and met him and his wife, Mary Lou, in Chelsea in London, and they commissioned that Darth Vader marionette. So after about a couple of months of building it, he invited me along to Elstree Studios, which is in North London, which is where all the studio work for all the Star Wars films was filmed. So,
Right.
and I really wanted to go to Elstree because, wow, this is amazing. So I drove over there. Mark showed us around. He had one shot to do for Empire Strikes Back against blue screen, which was amazing to watch. And then he asked, would I like to meet Stuart Freeborn? And Stuart was the makeup supervisor on the original trilogy, and he'd created Chewbacca. And he was one of my heroes, one of the guys that I was following when I was doing my prosthetic makeup. So I was so delighted to meet him. He was wonderful, clearly very busy, and he wrapped up our very brief meeting after seeing some photographs and portfolio stuff that I brought by saying, well, I might be in touch next week. Yeah, nice to meet you. And so I just thought it was a very pleasant way of trying to get rid of me so he could carry on with the work he had to do. But oddly enough, a week later, I got a phone call and I was offered a trainee position in Stuart Freeborn's special effects makeup department, and suddenly I was in working on Star Wars.
Wow, that's awesome.
So yeah, going to work in a toy store was my connection of getting into Star Wars, which is like crazy. And a lot of my friends had done the same job before and after me, and none of them got onto Star Wars because of it. So
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. It's wonderful.
I was 19 at the
So
time.
Oh, wow.
wow. That's wow. So since you already, touch base about you getting to work with Mark and Stuart for, for Star Wars things. Now, what's it like getting to work with Frank Oz for those too?
Well, I mean, originally my job was just to be in the workshop working on parts for Yoda. I sculpted Yoda's new top lip because the original sculpture had Yoda's mouth open. And when it was cast in foam latex to be made into a puppet, the mouth wouldn't close. So the best way Stuart felt was rather than resculpt everything, is to make a little extension on the top lip, so the mouth would naturally close. And that was my first job. So I sculpted 6 different top lips. Stuart chose the one he liked, and that's the one that's on Yoda. So I was doing that sort of workshop. I was expanding the foam latex face skins because foam latex shrinks by about 7%, and Stuart wanted it expanded back into the original size. So lots of like just mundane tasks. One day, one of the puppeteers was ill on set, and they suddenly needed somebody instantly to fill in operating Yoda's eyes. Stuart knew I was a second generation puppeteer, so Stuart Freeborn said, "No, no, David can go. You go down and take over for the afternoon." So I was rushed onto set, grabbed the control, which I knew how it worked because I was part of the team that built it, and tried to do the best I could for what Frank had told me. So I was over the moon that evening because I'd spent a half a day on set actually filming on Star Wars. I thought my life is complete. But the following morning, Frank said no, he was very happy with what I had done. He'd seen the rushes, and he'd like me to stay on operating Yoda's eyes alongside Wendy Midner, who became Wendy Froud. So the two of us split the work on Yoda's eyes, and so I got to work with Frank Oz every single day, and he was so supportive and generous with his time and encouragement on all things. And it was like a masterclass in the world's best puppetry for film. And I got to see that every single day on set.
Nice. What was it like performing Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi?
Oh, well, I mean, um, I got a phone call from Stuart Freeborn. I was working at the Jim Henson Creature Shop. I was working on all the promotion for Dark Crystal. And I got a
Oh,
phone call
okay,
from,
yeah.
yeah, so I was actually being employed by Jim Henson.
Yeah.
And I got a phone call from Stuart saying, "Oh, would I like to be chief puppeteer for Jabba?" I didn't have to audition. I didn't have to go through a whole series of questions and everything. It was just offered to me. Would I like to be chief puppeteer? And I said, yes, please. I said, but I am employed. I am contracted to Jim Henson, so I'll have to run it by Jim. So I asked Jim, and he said, well, as long as I cleared the work that was necessary for the promotion of Dark Crystal, then he would release me for my days puppeteering Jabba. So basically, I had my cake and eat it. I was being employed by Jim Henson, and I became chief puppeteer for George Lucas's new baddie for the new Star Wars film. So it was like, wow, this is amazing. So I was so lucky, and I had the opportunity to choose my co-puppeteer, the person who was going to sit next to me inside Jabba, and that was Toby Philpott. I'd worked with Toby on Dark Crystal and knew him from the past. He was also a second generation puppeteer like me. So there's not many of them. Frank Oz is a second generation
Wow.
puppeteer. So it was great working with Toby because he was just he he had a great set of skills that really between us we could really bring Jabba to life properly. So
Oh, that's great. So over the years, of course, you've gotten to work a lot with Henson.
yes.
Of course, you just mentioned the Dark Crystal. You worked on that as well as Labyrinth.
Hmm.
What was it like getting to work with Henson on those films?
Well, it was great because when I first started on Dark Crystal, it was just after Empire wrapped. And I was the first British puppet maker and puppeteer to be interviewed because I knew Kathy Mullen and Wendy Midner-Froud. So they said, "Oh, we'll go along and have
Yeah.
me." So I was the very first person and the first British employee on Dark Crystal. Jim had been using some of his American puppet makers to do research and development in New York, but and I got to meet those in November 1979. I just turned 20.
Wow.
And my very first ever Thanksgiving was that November 79, because England doesn't do Thanksgiving. But of course, Jim and all the American puppet makers wanted to celebrate Thanksgiving. So at Jim's house with Jim and his wife, Jane Henson, I was one of the lucky people to be invited to that very small family affair. It was wonderful. It was,
That's lovely.
yeah, I got to be part of the the extended family that was the early part of Dark Crystal, because when we finally got to filming, we had a crew of 500, so there's so many people. But this was a time when I got a chance to work with Jim directly and get to know him quite well. So,
Oh, that's great.
and he was a wonderful guy. He was so innovative. I mean, he'd already reinvented puppetry for television with the Muppets and Sesame Street, and
Yeah,
now
exactly.
with Dark Crystal, he's now doing it all over again, but with animatronics and slightly weird and fantastical creatures that the likes no one had
Yeah.
ever seen before.
Yeah, I just
Working,
want to take it to another level, you know?
yeah, and
Just
that
want
was
to keep
Jim.
creating, you know?
He always was. I mean, if he hadn't died so young, I wonder what he would have come up with next, because he was always ahead of everybody else with his thinking and his ideas. So,
Oh
uh,
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
definitely.
So no, he was a true gentleman, a lovely soul, and I felt very, very privileged and lucky to be employed by him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And Dark Crystal, and Labyrinth, they're wonderful films. And I saw you have the Labyrinth poster in the back.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and that's signed by Jim, and that's the sort of thing he would do. He signed
Oh wow,
posters to
that's
everybody
great.
who worked on the film, I believe. So certainly all the puppeteers got them, and all the puppet makers. So yeah, I think pretty much everybody got a hand signed poster from Jim. So that was
Oh, that's lovely.
the way he worked.
That's great.
Yeah, that's great. Now, now the addition now we're talking about with Henson and stuff now. So now you've got you a puppeteer both Sprocket and Uncle Traveling Matt in the international versions of Fraggle Rock. Now, it was like getting to do those characters and getting to be a part of to do things for internationally for that franchise. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of Dark Crystal, obviously those 500 people who are all freelance were let go and they went on to their next projects. And I wondered what mine might be. But Jim asked myself and Lyle Conway to stay on at the Creature Shop, just the two of us, to do that research and development and promotion for Dark Crystal when I got that call from Jabba. But at the same time, producer Duncan Kenworthy showed Lyle and I the very first rough cut of the first episode from Fraggle Rock, which was called the 30-minute Work Week. And we were looking at it and we're going, I think this is going to be a good show. It was still early days. They were still working out some of the problems with the script and the opening titles and everything like that. But I said, oh, my favorite is Sprocket the dog. I just love that. I said, I love the way that he actually doesn't speak. He doesn't have dialogue. So it's all in pure puppetry. And I said, I love that side of it, that he's got to communicate with all his gestures and just noises rather than words. So that's my kind of thing. I'd love to do something like that. And then so Duncan mentioned that to Jim Henson, and unbeknownst to me, were the plans for the international co-productions. I didn't know they were going to be doing that. They were going to film in England, France, Germany, and do the voices in Sweden. And it's like, wow.
Right.
Okay. So then after a little while, I'm told, yeah, no, you're going to be Sprocket for the international co-productions. So it's like, careful what you wish for. I mean, I said, oh, I'd love to do that. And that wish came back to me. And I got to perform Sprocket from I think 83 to 89 for 6 years on a
Wow.
regular basis throughout the
Wow.
world. And for me, the most interesting part of it was each country had a different take on Sprocket. In Germany, they said the original Canadian filming, which was the American version, but it was filmed in
Yeah.
Toronto. The original Canadian version is perfect. We are not going to change it. So they literally, it was exactly the same length. They actually matched every single one of the cameras to all the original cameras in the Canadian version. So the
Oh
only
wow.
difference was there was a different actor in there. It was the same set. They took the same
Wow.
set, but they dressed it to look Bavarian because we were filming in Munich.
Right.
But it was like they said, no, it's perfect. We're not going to change it. We're not going to get it wrong. So that was their approach. So my job was to match Steve's performance with a few variations for the German language, of course. So and that was really interesting doing that. Then in France, oh no, they wanted it way more cartoony. Now it's a massive, big French set. Doc is not Doc; he is a chef, and Sprocket's not called Sprocket; he's called Croquette. And it's like, and so it is really, there's lots of flour flying. It's all really big cartoony. So Sprocket's the same puppet, but a much more over the top character. England, on the other hand, England has Sprocket being more realistic, more like a real dog, and that's probably where my particular enjoyment lay the most, because that was more like the animatronics that I was interested. Sprocket had an eyebrow mechanism and an ear mechanism, and I was able to use those really to get very different expressions out of Sprocket and give them the impression he was thinking about everything and would be surprised at stuff. So that was a joy to perform. But yeah, I got to bark in multiple languages.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh,
That's great. So
wow.
you also puppeteered in the Little Shop of Horrors film. What was that like?
Yes, well, when we were working on Labyrinth, I was working with Frank Oz again, this time on The Wise Man. And the wrap of one day, Frank said that he was about to direct a new movie, Little Shop of Horrors. Would I be the lower lip for Audrey 2? And I said, I'd love to, yeah. So he said that they would be doing some tests in a few months, and so that was that. So it was great. Again, just reminded me that I've never had an agent. I've always got my jobs from somebody asking me to do it, or a recommendation from someone else. So, but this one was Frank asking me to do that, and so yeah, it was a long shoot, a long rehearsal. Everybody had to work at the puppet was so huge, and we wanted such fast movement that it actually physically wasn't possible. So we actually filmed in slow motion, we acted in slow motion, and then sped the film up. So we did that for all of the big Audrey 2s. I did build one hand puppet version for Lyle Conway and Frank Oz of Audrey 2 for the Some Fun Now sequence, where Seymour is having his finger and thumb sort of eaten or sucked by the plant, and he's dropping blood into the plant's mouth. That was a hand puppet. Nearly all the others, because of technical reasons, had to be mechanical cable controlled puppets, but this was the one and only hand puppet, and I built that and then performed it too, and so that was nice. And I got to perform the lower lip, as I say, and I was teamed with my good friend and often always teamed up by Frank and Jim, Mike Quinn. So
Oh
Mike
yeah, he's
Quinn,
great. He's
yeah,
done a
he
lot
was,
of wonderful things.
yeah, he's
Absolutely.
worked on so many things. We set up our own animatronic company for 10 years in the UK before we both moved out to the States. And
Oh, cool.
so yeah, so Mike and I worked on the lips there. So it was an amazing film, and I think probably still some of the very best animatronics there is to this day.
Oh,
I
for
mean, the
sure.
performance of it is, it's all in camera and it all looks amazing. And it is because of a lot of the little film tricks, are like the undercranking the film, which means that, yeah, you're filming at a slower speed and then speed it up when you project it. Um, Meant that the plant had a certain energy and life to it that it would not physically be possible to do otherwise. So again, using old film school tricks to bring the character to life in front of camera.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, indeed. Now, so now for of course you got to puppeteer with the Muppets. Now, starting off with the Muppet Christmas Carol, which that is such a uh wonderful special. What was it like? How do you how you kind of first began working for them, and what's it like getting to do Christmas Carol for them?
Well, actually, the first actual Muppets I did was Little Muppet Monsters. It was called. It was while we were filming Labyrinth in '85, and they needed to do some. Jim, Frank, and Dave Golds needed to do some Kermit, Piggy, Fozzie, and Gonzo pieces, and so sets were built in London at Elstree, and we filmed the Little Muppet Monsters. So this was the first time I had directly worked with Muppets. And so I'd worked on The Dark Crystal and obviously then was working on Labyrinth, but this was the first time with Muppets. And so typically I would double for Frank or be Frank's assistant. So if two of Frank's characters were in shot, then I would do the other one. So if he was doing Piggy, I'd be doing Fozzie at this stage, and then also would be like Frank's right hand when he needed a right hand. So that was my first introduction into Muppets, and I thought, wow, I've sort of now I've made it. I've become a Muppet performer, So, but
Yeah.
sadly, after Jim died, it was like, oh, well, what's going to happen? And Steve Whitmire took the mantle on and did an amazing job with
Oh
Kermit.
my gosh, yeah. He
Yeah.
was
So
wonderful.
Steve's great. He's
He
wonderful.
really is. He's such a lovely human being, brilliant puppeteer. I mean, Jim saw that when he saw, because I think Steve was doing some his own work I think in Atlanta as a teenager, and Jim said, "No, you got to come and work on Muppets." And then of course, he got Rizzo. But again, as I did, sort of assisting Frank and Jim. You start off doing that so that you learn the skills, you learn the style, and
Yeah, exactly.
the quality of Jim and Frank's performances and their ad libs. I mean, Kermit and Piggy, world class double act. They just happen to be puppets. I mean, they're as good as any double act that there's ever been, in my opinion. And they just happen to be puppets. So, so it's such a joy and a privilege to be part of that. But yeah, with Christmas Carol, now they decided to recast some of the characters because again, Richard Hunt was no longer with us at that point. So
Right.
but it was a wonderful experience for me. I was there every day of the shoot, and again, I got to perform and double from nearly all of the Muppet characters, which is a joy. And I think probably though the most fun I had was when I got to puppeteer Sprocket because Sprocket
Yeah.
was in it as well. And so
Right.
Steve was
Right,
well
yeah.
busy and very happy for me to do Sprocket, which was nice. He's always been very generous about saying we share that character. And so he said, "Oh, no, no, yeah, I can do that." And it was just so lovely because we had finished the international co-productions at that point. It had been a couple of years, but then getting Sprocket back on was like an old friend, and it was just like, oh yeah, it was just
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's
delightful.
Yeah.
So
wonderful.
it was a really great experience, and as I think nearly everybody I know, myself included, it's my favorite Christmas Carol movie.
Yes. Yes, that's too. Yes, it's so wonderful. It's kind of like
And
Definitely.
Christmas
Michael
tradition,
Caine was yeah, Michael Caine was brilliant. He was
Oh
so
yeah, of
supportive
course.
of everything. Again, I've been so lucky in nearly every single film I've done. The human actors, as it were, the stars, have been just phenomenal and supportive and delightful. So I guess probably if they didn't like puppets, they wouldn't have taken the job. I guess there's part of that, but
Yeah.
Right. So now, years after doing those projects, you also got to come back to work with them on a few things. And one of your first big feature things out there was the movie with Jason Segel. What
yes.
was doing that movie like? And do you have any like favorite scenes or puppets you had to do for that movie?
Well, I mean, that was wonderful. I was actually working on my own personal project when Martin Baker, who I'd known since the early days in Hampstead with Dark Crystal and then with Fraggles, he was one of the producers that I worked with on Fraggles. He was the executive producer of the film, and he called me up, David, he said we've got another Muppet film. I said, oh, fantastic, and he said we'd like you to be a assistant puppeteer for us. I said, oh, Martin, thank you so much. I'd love to. And it was a joy because it had been some years since I'd worked with the Muppet performers. I worked a lot on Christmas Carol, but Mike Quinn and I had our own company. So when it came to Muppet Treasure Island, I think I did about 4 days on the film because I was busy doing other things and I just couldn't clear that work. It had already been contracted, so it'd been a while since I saw any of the puppeteers at that point. So it was just wonderful catching up with them and seeing. And of course, we're now using high definition movie technology that's changed completely. And no, it was great. I got to again just double for lots of different characters. Enjoyed doubling for Gonzo and doubling for all the different characters. And
Oh, that's great.
so yeah, and then just having fun right with the penguins. The penguins were just like doing stupid things, and it was just like
Right, yeah, yeah.
it's just brilliant. And so and I just felt I remember sitting one night on Hollywood Boulevard. We were filming in Hollywood Boulevard, and there's the big dance sequence there. And it's almost like a pinch me moment. It's like here I am sitting Hollywood Boulevard, puppeteering with the Muppets. After it must have been what 35 years from when I'd started. It's like wow, this is amazing.
That's
I'm
great.
so lucky.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, they're a great film too. Now, from what was the transition from doing that and then doing Muppets Most Wanted?
Well, Muppets Most Wanted, I think most of that was actually filmed in England, and I was doing other work at that time, so I was not in England for that section. I worked on Muppets Most Wanted when they came back and did some reshoots in Los Angeles, I think in the Disney studio, and then on location. So
Gotcha.
um, again, that was great. I think I was doing we were doing some of the rats, radio control rats, and I think maybe eyes for Sweetums and that sort of thing. So
That's
um,
cool.
yeah, so that was fun. It was great to work on it and be part of it. But I think yeah, I think the bulk of it was filmed in England.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And you also got to work on some TV things for the Muppets, including the ABC series that came out in 2015, which also had a lot
Yes.
of celebrity guests. What was that like?
Well, that was great because I live in Burbank, and if I come out of my studio or my front door of the house, I can actually see Disney Studios from my front door. So I used to walk to work every day.
Wow.
Hmm.
And a good friend of mine, Kevin Carlson, he
Oh
lives
Yeah,
yeah.
Kevin. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's
yeah,
wonderful.
he's
Yeah, he's
brilliant, and
great.
he
Absolutely.
lives not
It's
far
awesome.
from me. He's also in Burbank, and he said, "Oh no, don't walk. I'm literally driving past your front door on the way in, so I'll pick you up." So all right, okay, thank you, Kevin. So he picked
Yep,
me up.
that's Kevin for you.
Yep. So he drove me around. We got in. We had to go around, wait to get into the gate, and then we had to go into the car park. We had to park right at the top of the car park. Came back, and I said, "Kevin, it's quicker for me to walk." I said, "So thank you very much for offering me, but I can actually get to the sound stage where we're filming Muppets quicker by foot." So yes, I used to walk there every day, and again, I was just delighted to be part of the mixture and seeing how it was going. Yeah, and again, I thought all the performers did amazing work. Steve was just amazing with Kermit, and Eric
Oh yeah.
with all of Frank's characters. I mean, so
Oh
here
yeah.
you are two puppeteers who have taken over from two of the greatest puppeteers ever and doing phenomenal work. And to be honest, I think Bill Beretta just
Bill, yeah.
stole it for me because his ad libs and his work they didn't always make it into the cut, and I could never understand why because he was phenomenally hilarious, and it was just
Oh,
brilliant.
Bill,
He's
he's
best.
the best.
He is, and so just so that level of quality, and again, Dave Gold's just being phenomenal. It was a joy to be part of, and just
Yeah, and
seeing
he's
all my
still
old
doing things for the
friends.
Muppets now. Yeah, of course.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, no. So
Just
that was a real joy. It was great to be involved in all that, and then of course I was lucky enough to be one of the last few performers to be part of the Muppets Take the Hollywood Bowl and the O2 in London. So
oh
I
yeah.
actually
Yes.
got
Oh
to
my
stand
gosh, such a
on the
wonderful
stage and look out.
shows.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, I've been to the Hollywood Bowl because I've lived here for 25 years, lived in Burbank for
Right.
5 years. So I've been to the Hollywood Bowl many times, but I've never stood on the stage and performed. And it just felt amazing to have that opportunity to be there. So
Yeah, and then like Rainbow Connection where all of them like together are singing. It
yeah,
was like, oh, such a beautiful moment.
yeah. No, I love being
Yeah.
part of that. So
Yeah, and this is kind of a deep cut, but another celebrity thing you did with the Muppets was a Studio DC Almost Live, which had
yes,
a lot of the Disney Channel stars. What was it like getting to work with them?
it was great. I mean, I remember we did a thing with Miley Cyrus when she was, I think, still Montana days. And she was brilliant. I
Right.
really enjoyed working with her. She was so professional, so good. And I think I was performing Janice in the band, and that was a joy. I really loved it. And but it was one of those things don't think I'd puppeteered for a little while, and then we're doing like 5 to 10 minutes with a song, and by the end of it, my arm was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this all day. But then I think the second take, all the old memory muscles kicked in, and I was fine for the rest of the day. So the first take, my arm was killing me, and then I was good for the rest of the day. So it's funny how the my natural ability to puppeteer sort of came back when I needed it.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah. Wonderful projects indeed. So,
Mm,
kind of moving ahead to like the animatronic stuff, you got to
mm.
work on a number of films in that sort of way, including Cats and Dogs and Snow Dogs. What
Yes.
were those like?
Well, Cats and Dogs was great. I mean, I had worked on Flintstone's Viva Rock Vegas for the Creature Shop, for the Jim Henson Creature Shop
Right.
in '99. I came over as performance supervisor, but basically was in London advising on all the construction of the puppets so that we could deliver the performances. So I was working out on with all my friends there in the London shop, and like I came out to California to do that and loved it. And all the guys in the LA creature shop said, "Oh, you know, you have to work out here." And I thought, well, the weather's much better here than it is back in London, and everybody was lovely. So had a meeting with Chris DeFaria and Larry Guterman, who were the producer and director of Cats and Dogs, and they wanted um, exact photorealistic matches of their trained animals for certain shots in the Cats and Dogs movie,
Oh,
and
cool.
so they were saying, and they seemed to like because they'd asked everyone who would build this sort of stuff. There's probably a good half a dozen high-end animatronic companies in LA at that time who could have done the work, but they chose us at the Creature Shop and me as the animatronic effects supervisor to head that and try and bring these characters to life for them. And for me, it was a real joy. I loved working for those particular people, Christopher especially, who really seemed to understand what we were trying to achieve. And they said, well, they think they will have a puppet of Mr. Tinkles, which was the white lead cat of that film. They said, but obviously, no one's really ever built a decent animatronic cat before. And so we were not expecting that we'd be able to use it for a great deal. But there's a sequence where he's sending video messages. And they said, well, there's probably 7 or 8 shots in that sequence. So if we can afford to build the puppet for those 7 or 8 shots. And that would be worth doing. So, and I said to everyone, well, I think we can build a puppet probably a little bit better than that. And in the end, they loved Mr. Tinkles. The the way it worked, we still were recording on film. We actually shot on film for Cats and Dogs. So so it was the traditional situation where the next morning there would be the rushes. They'd send the film off to be processed, and you would get to see the rushes, and they would transfer it to video. But it would be silent because they hadn't synchronized the sound yet. And we were told that the executives at Warner Brothers were watching the silent rushes, and trying to work out whether it was the puppet or the animatronic. The puppet or the animal.
Right.
So it's like, was it the animatronic puppet or was it the animal? So they were having bets on what it was, and that was such a huge compliment that they couldn't tell the difference between our puppets and the real animals. So and so from those possible six shots that were going to be video and all grainy and hard to see, we shot Mr. Tinkles for every sequence of the film. They even rewrote the script to include more puppet sequences.
Oh, nice.
And
nice.
And there are a handful of shots that I asked them not to use that generally in the film that to me look way too puppety and were not successful in my opinion. But I asked the crew at the end of the shoot when we saw the crew screening, how many animatronic puppet shots do you think there are in Cats and Dogs? And they go, well, it's quite a few. I said, yeah, there are. And they said, the general consensus was about 75 shots.
Wow.
And I said, actually, it's 315. And
Wow.
they were blown away. I said, there's 315. I said, there's at least 100 shots that nobody knows are animatronics in there. And there's the handful that are clearly I wish they hadn't used them, but it's just from the puppeteering point of view. But they said, no, it tells a story. It's the character. Everything's fine. Don't worry. And so that was delightful. I really enjoyed that. So we achieved far more than we ever expected.
Nice.
And everybody was delighted with what we did. And I think kind of from that we got a recommendation, but also as the next film from the director of Flintstones, Brian Levant. He was doing Snow Dogs, and they had cast a beautiful looking husky in the lead role for the really sort of kind of scallywag dog they called Demon, but the real dog was really gentle, really quiet, very timid. So, and they tried to sort of train the dog up to do certain things, but there's a lot of things that the dog just wouldn't naturally do. He looked the part, but he wasn't an aggressive dog at all, quite the opposite. So there were a whole load of things that they needed in the film that the dog wouldn't do, and they felt that was inappropriate to try and force the dog to do. So we built again, through the Jim Henson Creature Shop, we built an absolute photorealistic match to the main husky dog in that film. And the match was really difficult because it needed to be absolutely perfect. And so myself and Robin Dufay, who was in charge of all the fur and all the coloring of the dog, she and I went up to the location where it was being filmed in Vancouver 2 weeks early to spend 2 very long weeks matching our animatronic dog to the real animal. And in the end, everyone was very happy with it. And I also designed a new style of eyelid mechanism because I'd been doing some animation. In animation, you often change the shape of the eyelids a little bit to give an impression of being either angry or sad. And I thought, well, yeah, we need to up the quality of the animatronics for these animatronic films if we're going to have any chance of still being employed alongside CG. So design this eyelid mechanism. And one of the very first shots we ever filmed on our puppet was literally close up of the eyes, which would have filled a whole full cinema screen. And because the lighting was so good from Thomas Ackerman and the fur work and this eyelid mechanism with Kevin Carlson controlling the face and me controlling the head, it looked excellent.
Oh, wow.
So we had a wonderful time then performing all the other shots. So that first shot proved that he looked great and he worked. So everyone was very happy.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Since we're getting close to wrap things up soon, of course we gotta talk about your upcoming autobiography will be coming out some point next month in February.
Mhm.
Can you kind of talk about your career process doing it? Can you kind of tell us about it?
Yes, indeed. Well, about 20 years ago, a friend of mine said, "You've got all these films, all these stories, you work with so many people. You really need to write it down." I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." He said, "Well, if only if like for your granddaughters." And I said, "Yeah, well, I guess, yeah." I said, "No, it would be nice to do it." And so I said, I was always working 24/7. And I said, I need a gap to be able to work on it. So along came COVID. And no, I didn't do it. I thought, no, this isn't right. I can't. But a little while later, there was like a four month gap when there was no work, and it seemed the right time. I thought, but how am I going to write this? There's so many stories, and I thought, I know what, I've got so many photographs. I will choose a photograph and write the story around the photograph. So the photograph will be there in the book, and so you'll be able to see the story that I'm talking about. And so this is the book. But as you can see, it is just absolutely stuffed full of photographs. So every moment in the different parts of
Wow,
my career,
Oh, that's cool.
different things in
that's
Dark
awesome.
Crystal, Labyrinth. So you get to see all the different parts of the movie industry and my life. Um, and there's photographic reference of it. So I think it makes it more interesting and more tangible that way. So I took the idea of using the photograph as the essence for the piece, and those were the ones that I used for my stories.
That's
Wonderful.
wonderful.
Looking forward to reading it and check it out.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I enjoyed doing it, so it was good fun.
That's
And I was
wonderful.
really
Wonderful.
lucky because people like Frank Oz, Mark Hamill, Brendan Fraser were very happy for me to use the photographs in there. So, because these days, of course, you have to get permission from everybody.
Exactly. And for
Of
those watching and listening, the book is called My Life with Animatronics, Movies, Puppets, and Beyond, and links to where you can purchase that will be in the description. So,
Excellent.
course.
so to wrap this up, the
Yes.
last question that Jake is about to ask is a question we ask all of our guests at the end. Go ahead, Jake.
All right.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Chris. Of course, podcast called Jake's Happy Nostalgia. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of in your own terms? How would you define the word nostalgia?
The world nostalgia. Very interesting. Um, Probably my nostalgia will be my early puppet days with my parents because I used to go along to puppet exhibitions and what would be now called conventions. And so I got to meet all the original puppet people in the UK. I got to meet the original puppeteer behind British Sooty. There's Sooty and Sweep. I got to
Oh
see
yeah.
the Thunderbirds
Right.
people. So I got to meet actually Bob Pelham, who was the guy who made the Pelham puppets, and I got to meet all the amazing British puppeteers that were the big theatrical puppeteer stars of the day. And so that would be so yeah, going back into the 60s, seeing all the British TV shows that were on television, all the British acts and some of the ventriloquists and so that would be my take on that, on the nostalgia, is that it would be the nostalgic view on basically puppetry in TV and films before I started working in it, which was obviously The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Great words to end
Thank
on.
you so much.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Great chatting with you guys.
Great,
Yeah.
Yes,
great
you too,
chatting with
Dave.
you
I'm
as
glad
well.
we
This was a
got
lot of fun.
yes, I'm glad we got to spread the word about your biography and looking forward more of what's coming up next for you.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what the next chapter will be, but yeah, 65. So it might be retirement, might be the next thing, but we'll see.
All right. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
I will do. Thanks very much, guys.
Of
You as well,
course.
Dave.
Yes. Thanks
Yeah.
again, Dave.
Okay. Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes, you too.
Yes. It's goodbye from us as well. We absolutely enjoyed our time speaking with Dave Barclay. Links to his autobiography will be in the description down below, so you can purchase a copy. Once again, the autobiography is called My Life with Animatronics, Movies, Puppets, and Beyond. Comes out in February, so keep on the lookout for that. And you can pre-order a signed copy of it through the Cool Waters Productions website, and it will also be available through the Barnes & Noble website, unsigned. And so links to both of those will be in the description down below. Keep on the lookout for more wonderful interviews coming your way. And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Yes, keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Be sure to follow Jake and the Happy Nostalgia team on social media, check out our website, and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.